As Donald Trump reshapes America's role on the global stage with unprecedented boldness, two initiatives have emerged that perfectly encapsulate his administration's approach to international affairs: a controversial Board of Peace requiring billion-dollar membership fees, and the aftermath of the audacious military raid that captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. Together, these developments reveal a foreign policy doctrine that blends transactional business logic with old-fashioned power projection, creating what critics describe as a new form of American imperialism dressed in the language of peace and prosperity. The Board of Peace proposal, detailed in a leaked draft charter obtained by Bloomberg, represents perhaps the most brazenly transactional approach to international diplomacy in modern American history. According to the document, countries seeking permanent membership must contribute at least $1 billion in cash to secure their position. Trump himself would serve as the board's inaugural chairman with sweeping powers. He would decide who receives invitations, approve all decisions regardless of member votes, control the official seal, set meeting agendas, and even designate his own successor. The structure reads less like an international organization and more like a private club with a very expensive membership fee and a single decision-maker at the top. The draft charter describes the Board of Peace as an international organization that seeks to promote stability, restore dependable and lawful governance, and secure enduring peace in areas affected or threatened by conflict. It would become official once 3 member states agree to the terms. Regular members would serve 3-year terms subject to renewal by the chairman, but the billion-dollar contributors would bypass this limitation entirely, securing indefinite membership through their financial commitment. The board would hold annual voting meetings and quarterly non-voting sessions, all scheduled at times and locations deemed appropriate by Trump. The chairman would also possess the power to remove members, though this could be vetoed by a 2/3 majority of member states, a safeguard that sounds democratic on paper but would be difficult to achieve in practice given the chairman's control over membership itself. The proposal has generated swift and severe criticism from multiple quarters. Several European nations invited to join have privately expressed that Trump's apparent personal control over contributed funds makes participation unacceptable. These countries are reportedly coordinating a collective pushback against the proposals, viewing them as fundamentally incompatible with normal diplomatic practice and financial accountability. Critics worry that Trump is attempting to build an alternative or rival to the United Nations, the established forum for international cooperation that he has long criticized as ineffective and biased against American interests. The timing is particularly provocative. Trump has invited world leaders, including Argentina's Javier Milei and Canada's Mark Carney, to join a Board of Peace specifically focused on Gaza, a proposal that immediately drew criticism from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who noted that details hadn't been coordinated with his country despite Israel being the most directly affected party. The White House announced an initial executive panel that would include Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair before the formation of the overall board. This lineup signals the board's hybrid nature, combining official government representatives with family members and international figures in a way that blurs traditional distinctions between state diplomacy and personal initiative. The inclusion of Kushner is particularly notable given his extensive business dealings in the Middle East and the ethical questions that surrounded his role in Trump's first administration. While the Board of Peace proposal raises questions about the future of international diplomacy, the Venezuela situation demonstrates Trump's willingness to move from proposal to action with shocking speed and force. The January 3 raid that captured Maduro represented an extraordinary assertion of American power, a military operation conducted on foreign soil to seize a sitting head of state and transport him to the United States to face narco-terrorism charges. Maduro pleaded not guilty in his initial court appearance, but his plea is almost beside the point. The real message was sent the moment American forces extracted him from Caracas. Trump's response to the successful operation has been characteristically bold and vague in equal measure. He has declared that the United States would run Venezuela until new elections can be held, without providing a timeline or detailed governance structure. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been tasked with leading the process to implement economic and political reforms in Venezuela, heading a team that includes officials working on energy, financial, and military policy. Trump emphasized that multiple officials, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Vice President J.D. Vance, would have key roles, but when asked who was ultimately in charge, he identified himself without hesitation. The economic dimensions of Trump's Venezuela policy are particularly revealing. He has suggested that the administration may subsidize efforts by energy companies to rebuild Venezuela's oil industry, which has deteriorated dramatically under years of mismanagement and sanctions. Major oil producers are reportedly prepared to spend billions of dollars to tap Venezuela's valuable crude reserves, which are among the largest in the world. Trump framed this as a win-win proposition. Venezuela would become richer than they ever have before, while the United States would benefit massively in terms of economic security and military cooperation. The language is unmistakably transactional American military action creating investment opportunities that benefit both the target country and American interests. The political situation in Venezuela remains extraordinarily complex. Delcy Rodriguez, who served as Maduro's vice president, was sworn in as his successor and has publicly denounced his capture while apparently cooperating with American demands behind the scenes. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt stated that Trump is pleased with how Rodriguez and the interim government have run Venezuela, noting they have thus far met all of the demands and requests of the United States. This creates a bizarre situation where the Venezuelan government simultaneously protests American intervention while complying with American directives, suggesting either pragmatic accommodation to overwhelming force or a more complex coordination than publicly acknowledged. The fate of opposition leader Maria Corina Machado illustrates the complicated politics at play. Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize and has been the face of Venezuelan opposition to Maduro's regime, met with Trump at the White House and presented him with her Nobel Medal as a recognition of his unique commitment with our freedom. Trump called it a great honor and described her as a wonderful woman who has been through so much. Yet despite this warm reception, Trump had previously stated he didn't believe Machado had sufficient support or respect in Venezuela to lead the country, effectively sidelining her from the transition process. A new poll found that a majority of Venezuelans want Machado to lead the country, contradicting Trump's assessment, but she remains shut out of the leadership transition. The episode demonstrates Trump's willingness to accept symbolic gestures and personal deference, while making practical decisions based on his own calculations rather than popular will or opposition credentials. The Venezuela operation exists within Trump's broader reassertion of American dominance throughout Latin America, which he has branded the Monroe Doctrine, a play on the Monroe Doctrine of 1823 that declared the Western Hemisphere an American sphere of influence. This doctrine has manifested in threatening statements toward Colombia, a long-standing American ally now governed by left-wing President Gustavo Petro, whom Trump has told to watch his ass and subjected to sanctions. Trump has repeatedly suggested sending American troops to combat cartels in Mexico, an offer firmly rejected by President Claudia Sheinbaum as a violation of Mexican sovereignty. The pattern is unmistakable. Trump is using the drug war as justification for intervention while specifically targeting left-wing governments regardless of their cooperation history with the United States. The international reaction has been swift and concerned. At an emergency United Nations Security Council meeting following the Venezuela raid, nations criticized Trump's action and expressed worry about expanding military operations into other Latin American countries. Under Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo, speaking for Secretary General Antonio Guterres, stated they remain deeply concerned that rules of international law have not been respected. US Ambassador to the UN Mike Waltz defended the operation as limited in scope. There is no war against Venezuela or its people. We are not occupying a country. This was a law enforcement operation. But this framing treating the military seizure of a foreign head of state as mere law enforcement represents its own kind of provocation, suggesting that American legal jurisdiction extends wherever American interests dictate. Trump appears unconcerned about potential backlash from his political base,